They don't make them like this anymore. Okay, everybody, today we're taking a look back at the career of Charles Bronson, a man who was in some of the most iconic, greatest films of all times, and yet went on to have an amazing career in B-movies in the grindhouse field that we all know and love. So, without any further ado, let's take a look back at one of the highest paid actors of the 70s, Charles Bronson. Charles Bronson was born Charles Dennis Buczynski on November 3rd in 1921 in the coal mining town of Urnfeld, Pennsylvania. He was the product of Lithuanian immigrants and was the 11th of their 15 children. He never even learned to speak English until he was a teenager. At the age of 10, a tragedy beset his family. His father, who had always worked in the coal mines, passed away, and that meant Charles had to go to work. At the age of 10, like I said, he started working for the local coal mine in the offices because of his rather young age. But later, after he graduated high school, the first in his family to do so, into the mines he went with everybody else in dangerous, cramped, and uncomfortable conditions. After that, one of the biggest saving graces, as he called it, of his life took place. World War II. Into the Air Force he went, where he said for the first time in his life, he was able to have 3 full meals a day and receive new clothing. Charles became an aerial gunner on a B-29 and did 25 successful missions, earning a Purple Heart for being shot in the arm by a Japanese fighter. After World War II, Charles Bronson, using the GI Bill, was able to go to college to do the one thing that he always loved, the one thing he was praised for in high school, and that was art. An adept painter, an adept sketcher. He always loved drawing. He always loved creating artwork, and that's what he went off to college to do. While in college, he kind of fell in with a group of actors. They needed somebody to paint their sets, do the backdrops. And hey, money's money, folks. It was around this time he met and later married Harriet Tendler. She was an aspiring actress and kind of supported and nurtured and encouraged his career and encouraged him to come into acting and pursue a job in that field. Now, Charles didn't really care about acting per se. He wasn't that much into it, but he thought it was a quick hustle, a good way to make some money and a good way to put some kind of food on the table. It was at that time he was able to land some really uncredited supporting roles in motion pictures like You're in the Navy Now, The People Against O'Hara, Red Skies of Montana, The Marrying Kind, and Battle Zone. And he was able to pop around on TV too with the stuff like, Biff Baker USA and The Doctor and Treasury Men in Action and The Joe Palooka Story and Gunsmoke and U.S. Marshal. And he even got lead work in Machine Gun Kelly and the TV show Man with a Camera. From there he was able to get a supporting role in one of the greatest motion pictures ever made, one of the greatest motion picture westerns ever made, and that is The Magnificent Seven. You remember the lineup, everybody. We're talking Yul Brynner, we're talking Jim Coburn, we're talking Steve McQueen. He was in there with all the heavy hitters, and he played his part well, and he was memorable in that motion picture. In 1963, he played Danny, the Tunnel King, in The Great Escape, another amazing motion picture. And it was on that film, while working with David McCallum, he met his future wife, Jill Ireland. She happened to be married to David McCallum at the time, and he told David to his face, "I'm going to marry your wife someday." Well, he wasn't kidding. They started having an affair. His wife found out. They got a divorce. He wound up marrying Jill Ireland. And they were together for the next couple of decades. Oh, what can you do? That did not make him the big breakout star he wanted to be, though. And he wound up going back to more television stuff like, General Electric Theater and Laramie and Alfred Hitchcock Presents and Have Gun Will Travel and The Travels of Jamie McPeters, which he wound up on with a very young Kurt Russell. And upon that, I must break away from the format that we're in for a minute and give you one of my favorite stories that I've ever heard repeated in Hollywood. Kurt Russell was very young at the time, and Charles Bronson was on this TV show with him, and they said, hey, you got to watch out for Chuck. He's a little bit ill-tempered. While working together, Charles Bronson's birthday came about, and a young Kurt Russell said, I got to get this guy something, and bought him like a little remote control airplane. When he presented it to Charles Bronson just looked at the plane, looked at him, and walked away. Said nothing, had nothing to say. Kurt Russell was dejected, didn't understand what just took place until somebody said, hey, Mr. Bronson wants you in his dressing room. Not knowing what to expect, he went in there, and Bronson looked at him and sheepishly, almost without knowing how to say thank you, just said, nobody's ever given me a birthday present before. Later on, it was Kurt Russell's birthday. Charles Bronson went and got him and Kurt Russell matching skateboards, and they would run around skateboarding on the studio lot. When Charles Bronson asked young Kurt why he wasn't skateboarding anymore, Kurt said, well, they told me I couldn't. Charles Bronson said, who told you you couldn't? And he said, well, guy over there. Next thing he knows, Bronson says, come with me. They walk up to the studio head's office, blow right by the secretary, walk right into his room, and Charles Bronson tells the president of the studio, hey, I'm Charles Bronson. We got skateboards. We're going to be skating around this lot. Plain and simple, the way it's going to be. Walked out. Those sons of bitches went skateboarding. Anyway, back on track. Charles continued to go on to several other things, TV series work, The Big Valley, Rawhide, The Fugitive, The Virginian, and he also landed another role in another amazing motion picture, The Dirty Dozen. Again, not the star, but a supporting role in one of the all-time classic action war films in history. Movie was a big success. Charles got some attention, but he still wasn't the leading man. He was still playing second fiddle to everybody else. He continued to work, turning down some roles in some overseas films that went to be starred by Clint Eastwood. Yup, the spaghetti westerns, their first person they wanted was Charles Bronson. He turned him down. It didn't work out. But several years later, he was offered some roles in some of these overseas films where he was really given a lot more attention than what he received here. And he went on to be in movies like The Guns of San Sebastian and Villa Rides. And then he really got attention in a great motion picture, Once Upon a Time in the West. This catapulted him overseas. This made him huge in Europe, huge in Japan. And he went on to be a power player, Rider on the Rain, London Affair, Red Sun, The Valachi Papers. We're talking, this made him a megastar overseas, and it gave him a lot more clout and a lot more bank, and he was taking it all in. Hollywood, not being one to pass up on an opportunity to make some cash, decided we got to bring our boy Bronson back and make him a Hollywood megastar. His first film out the gate might not have been the biggest one that brought him attention. He was in Chato's Land. Good flick, is what it was. But he went on to be in some of the best stuff you ever heard of. I mean, he was in stuff like The Mechanic and The Stone Killer and Mr. Majestic, where he was making for 6 weeks. He was making $20,000 a day. He got 10% of the net. He was given $2,500 a week walking around money. Yes, Mr. Bronson was able to dictate those financial terms fairly well. But it was after that that he landed one of the most iconic motion pictures of its time and one of the movies that made him the megastar we all remember. Yes, folks, Death Wish. Paul Kersey himself, Death Wish. This shot Bronson at the age of 52 right to the top of the heap, folks. This made him the big cheese in Hollywood. He was making money hand over fist, had a lot of power, had a lot of control. His next few movies, they all did okay. Hard Times, which was an amazing motion picture, played it at 53. God was shredded, by the way. He did stuff like St. Ives and The White Buffalo and Telephone. All good movies, but none of them had the power and the success of Death Wish. But what brought him right back to the top again? That's right, it made a bunch of money, even though it wasn't as good. Death Wish 2. And just like that, Bronson was back into the money machine and back right on top. He went on to make a whole bunch of other movies around that time. 10 to Midnight, The Evil That Men Do, Murphy's Law, Assassination. Again, none of them had the impact of Death Wish 1, and none of them had the financial success of Death Wish 2. But solid movies, and he did good work. Also, yes, we know, which kind of makes him a grindhouse king himself, he was in several other Death Wish movies. We're talking Death Wish 3, Death Wish 4, Death Wish 5, whatever. He was in a bunch of them. It's just the way it went. Sadly, around this time, Jill Ireland lost her battle to breast cancer. She'd been fighting it for years. She'd been sick on and off. Finally, just it was too much for her, and she finally gave out. So, sad thing, she passed on. Charles stayed single for another 8 years, where he married this other woman, much younger than him. Her name was Kim Weeks, and she was with him from 1998 until his death in 2003. Okay, folks, let's get to it. What makes Charles Bronson awesome? Charles Bronson, when you look back at his career, was really one of the last hard men. I mean, he wasn't some Hollywood guy. You didn't have to look at a guy like Charles Bronson and say to yourself, is he a tough dude? You knew he was a tough dude. He grew up the tough way. He lived a tough life. Very isolated, very singular. He didn't really hang out in Hollywood crowds. He didn't mesh and party with the Hollywood elites. He was known for being quiet. He was known for being to himself. He stuck to his family, and he stuck to himself and very little else. And one of the things that also was a testament to perseverance was that he didn't really find success in Hollywood until he was well past the age of when success should be found. We're talking about he was 39 years old when he landed a supporting role in The Magnificent Seven. He was 52 in Death Wish. He was 53 in Hard Times. That's very unusual for somebody to come out and to be in their peak at that point, when most careers are steadily on the decline. So we look back at Charles Bronson and reflect upon a time where people grew up and knew real adversity and real poverty. In an era now when kids think that they're being neglected if their iPhone is 2 generations out of the new, you know what I'm talking about. All right, everybody, be good, take care, stay out of trouble, take care of a neighbor, look out for a friend, and above all else, under no circumstances, take any bullshit from anybody. See you soon.